Hello, everybody. It's Chastity White Rose here again, and I'm doing another live stream. And today I have my wonderful 100% juice tomato, my tomato juice. I like tomato juice. Yeah, tomato juice is great. So anyway, this live stream is one that I was not originally planning on doing. But I was talking with some friends just earlier today while I was playing Minecraft. I was playing Minecraft with two friends on my friend's realm, and we got to talking about transgender stuff. We got to talking about, people and their gender identity and stuff like that. And it occurred to me that although I've referenced my own experience and explained what being transgender means to me, I've never really done an entire video really dedicated to the topic of gender. And I feel like this topic has been gone over and over by many different YouTubers. It's been done by many different people who all have their opinions. And you got to be careful when you're talking about gender and LGBT issues in general, because people get pissed off really easy. However, anyone who knows me knows that I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I tell exactly what I think, and people are just angry at me, and that's why I'm not popular. If you want to be popular, there's certain things you have to say and certain things you are not allowed to say. So, okay, the key here, if you want to be popular when talking about gender issues and stuff like that, well, then you just have to say, yeah, trans women are women and trans men are men, and you just got to be like, well, yeah, everybody is just whatever they feel that they are. That's what you got to say, because that's the common, liberal Democrat narrative these days in this political climate and all that. And I'm not sure why it's become such a big issue. And I must admit, now I listen to a lot of videos on transgender issues and gender identity. And so I know the basics. I know the things people say. I know the things people believe in general about these things. And I want to go over something, okay? See, because how you answer these questions about, who's a man or who's a woman really gets down to definitions. And defining what a man is or defining what a woman is at the heart of it. What is a man and what is a woman? And I think this is where it gets tricky, because the common explanation is that in modern times that sex and gender are not the same thing. How sex is biological. Your biological sex is, your chromosomes and your genitals that you're born with. That's biological sex. Whereas your gender identity is more of an internal feeling of what you feel that you are. You know what I'm saying? What you feel that you are, and it's more psychological. So you could say that your biological sex is visible to everyone from the moment you're born, whereas your gender is an invisible thing. It's a psychological thing. It's a mental thing, or maybe even deeper than that. And so I want to dive into this topic, and my opinion, this is just my opinion for what it's worth, okay? Because I've learned a lot by listening to other people's experiences and my own experience, and my experience is different. But I want to get into this because think about it. What is a man or what is a woman? Okay, this is the topic of this video. And each of us has a different answer to that. In fact, it's just like, the God question, like, well, what is God? And I was thinking about that recently from another video I saw, because people have to define which God of which religion they're talking about, how that God's defined. And just as God needs to be defined before we can debate whether or not God exists, we also need to define what a man is or what a woman is before we can decide who is a man and who is a woman. Think about this. This is serious stuff. And what I'm about to tell you is going to probably blow your mind. But think about this. First of all, I think that gender is a very weird topic because I believe that gender is both an internal sense, it's a real thing that is experienced. People experience a gender identity. I know I do, and I think everybody experiences to some extent. So I think it's very real, but because it's invisible to anyone except the person experiencing it, it's not exactly the type of thing that can be proven. Like, how do you prove your gender identity? How do you do that? I don't think you can, because you can't transfer your own mind to someone else. And so what people do, because gender identity is an invisible thing, then people decide, well, gender isn't something we can see, but biological sex is something that we can see, or at least people think they can see. But not in times like this, because let me tell you, with the successful with hormones and surgery that people do these days, some people are pretty good at looking like the opposite biological sex from what they were born as. And I gotta say, some trans women are lucky in that they're able to start before puberty or in the middle of puberty. They're able to start younger, and so they're able to achieve, a female-looking body by the time they're an adult. Whereas someone like me, because I'm older, I probably will never be able to look like some hot woman, even though that would be great because I'd be more popular, But the trans men, the women who, no matter what age they are, when women start taking testosterone, they start growing facial hair, they start getting more muscular, and they end up looking exactly like men. Like, you would not know the difference, especially in the case of trans men, because if you put any woman biologically on testosterone long enough, it won't be too long before they'll look more masculine than I do. It's not very hard, because I'm actually more feminine myself, even physically. And so there's a lot to unpack here. There is so much to unpack here when it comes to discussing biological sex and gender identity, because when you think of what a man is or what a woman is, it's going to be filtered through your own experiences, okay? Because there's two routes we could go. And whether we're going to be discussing biological sex or whether we're going to be discussing gender, there's those two ways to go, and they're both totally rabbit holes, okay? So let me first start out with the biological sex thing, okay? Biological sex is not as clear-cut into male and female as you might think. Think about it. How do you define someone's biological sex? Is it by their chromosomes? Because if it's by their chromosomes, then first of all, you don't know somebody's chromosomes by looking at them. You don't. People have extra or missing chromosomes. Klinefelter syndrome is very common, where men, have an extra X chromosome, and so they're sort of intersex. There are intersex conditions where people are born with more than one set of genitalia, and they have extra chromosomes, or they might be missing an X chromosome or something like that, So first of all, biological sex is not really clearly cut into male or female, because if you define it by someone's chromosomes, well, you don't know someone's chromosomes by looking at them. You can take a guess, and half the time you might be right, but you could also be wrong, because unless you actually are the scientist or someone trained in a lab who does the karyotype blood test and looks at the genetic code of someone by their blood or some other DNA sample, you don't know their chromosomes. So chromosomes are not the measure that humans in everyday society are looking at when they assume someone's biological sex. Here is what people do, okay? People do this, or at least I've done this in the past, so I assume this is what people do based on the way they act. Is they think, oh, well, this person has really long hair, so they must be a woman. And I cannot tell you how many times someone's been behind me and they've called me ma'am, because they see my long hair, And then I turn around and they're like, oh, sorry, sir. And I'm like, well, no, that's okay. You had it right the first time. And then they're just confused, and then they're embarrassed and they walk off. That's just the way it happens. Especially, working in a grocery store. That happened to me all the time. And that's the funny thing. But so like they do it based on the length of someone's hair, and they also do it based on how big their boobs are. Like if you have big boobs, for example, then people are going to assume you're female because for whatever odd reason, women have huge boobs, you know? And the thing to be clear about is that both men and women have breasts. It's just that women's breasts in general are overgrown due to the influence of, you know, all that estrogen and perhaps progesterone as well influencing breast size. So people assume that, you know, people with big boobs and with long hair are women. They do that. And additionally, there are a few other things that people look at. They look at how muscular their body is. They look at where they have facial hair and all sorts of weird stuff. But this gets way more complicated because, first of all, you know, my mom and my sister can grow facial hair. They can grow facial hair, you know. And then there are there are some women who are actually look a little bit more like men just because they're so muscular. Like it so happens that I knew someone at Hy-Vee that was a woman, but she was very strong, you know, and muscular. And she used to do wrestling in school, you know, she told me. Because I noticed how strong she was, how much she could lift effortlessly, you know. So people look at facial hair, you know, muscular strength, how big your boobs are, how long your hair is. There's several indicators of what people look for when they assume because here's the thing that people do. People assume someone's biological sex. They don't go and ask people if they're male or female biologically. No, they just look at them and assume. And most of the time you can generally tell because certain body types having certain genitals do produce certain hormones. So that's the thing is that people you can also tell by voice usually. So for example, I still look very much male and I still have a slightly male voice, though it's not as high as some men. So people are always going to, for the rest of my life, still probably brand me as male, you know, just because, you know, I look more and sound more like a biological male because biologically speaking, I'm male. And I know that because, you know, I was born with the penis and testicles, you know. And so, and I still know what my chromosomes are. One of these days, I am going to get my chromosomes tested because I'm sure that I have Klinefelter syndrome. I'm pretty sure I have so many signs of it. But, you know, the thing is, there's so much more to it than that. Because people look at people and they just assume male or female, and then they make a number of assumptions. And here's where the whole concept of gender gets into it. Because yes, I have no problem with agreeing with most people who say that, well, people are male or female, but I would also add that there are intersex conditions where people are maybe neither male or female biologically, or maybe both. But the debate about gender identity actually doesn't have all that much to do with biological sex, because how I define gender is like the social expectations people put on you. Okay? Like here's an example. They assume that, they assume that the clothes you wear and the way you dress and the way you act, they assume that if you're a man that you're going to act a certain way, and they assume that if you're a woman you're going to act another way. So this is something that not everybody gets, but the reason that transgender people take hormones and to have surgeries to look like the opposite sex from what they were born in is because they want to be treated by society as they typically treat that opposite sex. So for example, let's say that you are transgender. Let's say that you're a trans woman and you were born in a male body, but everything about your dreams and how you feel inside is an internal sense that you're a girl, that you're female. And that's kind of how I feel. That's how I feel, is that internal sense. But here's the thing is, if that trans woman also is sexually attracted to men and wants to marry a man and have a husband and wants to have sex with men, then what do you think is going to happen? Then she will try to change her body to match someone who looks biologically female, because it's a lot easier to date men if you look like a woman, because then you can appear straight and then you can have straight privilege. And the same thing would work in reverse as well. So like for example, it might be easier for some people, especially those who feel like they're a male, even if they were born female, it might be easier for them to take testosterone and then have surgery to get their boobs removed so that they can look completely like a man, because it's just easier if you look like a man to date women, because then you won't be branded a lesbian, because people will think you're a straight man. So here's what it comes down to, is I believe a major driving factor, the reason that people want to change their bodies through hormones and surgery, is because of sexual attraction and their sexual orientation. I think that people's sexual orientation plays a lot into why people are having these surgeries and taking these hormones. Because if people were not so freaked out and being anti-gay in the first place, then you know what? People could just be gay. They could do that. But we live in a time where it's not so clear. Now, I do think there is a difference. I'm not saying that all trans people are gay or that all gay people are trans people. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that transgender people have a high motivation to end up transitioning with hormones and surgery so that they can appear straight, they can appear heterosexual to society. And that's the thing about it. And this is the very, very weird thing about it, because in my own life, there is something I have noticed personally as I've thought about something. It occurred to me, I guess a few years ago, really, that if I had been born biologically female, I might have been a lesbian. I'm serious. Like, if I had been biologically female right from the very start of my life, I could have easily been a lesbian, just because, sure, I like women. I like hanging around with them as friends. So perhaps I would have ended up having some relationship with a woman had I been born female. That would have been considered gay. So I still would have faced discrimination for that sort of thing if that was the case. But I realized something, that because I was born biologically male, it changes the whole thing. It changes the whole thing. And I realized that even if I was attracted to someone, because I'm biologically male, I don't have that option to have a girlfriend or wife. Not really. I don't really have that option. And here's why. Because there are assumptions made about what a man or woman does. There are assumptions. And I would be faced with a certain stigma and a certain expectation, in that a man because most people are straight, okay? And for them, they have this whole package, a thing that they date someone of the opposite sex, that they get married to them, and that they produce children with them. There's all these sorts of things. But the problem is that works against someone like me, because of the fact that I'm asexual and I'm not interested in sex, and then also being anti-natalist and against procreation. That really works against me. So in other words, my options are limited. You know what I mean? Because I'm a biological man, then, I have the option of, if I was to have a life partner, someone like a spouse, it would have to be somebody, first of all, who was okay never having sex with me. being asexual and in fact anti-sexual really works against me. Whereas it'd be different if I'd been biologically female, because then at least being in a lesbian relationship would have been some sort of technical option. I don't even know what it is lesbians do sexually, and I don't really need to know. I don't really care all that much. But here's how I perceive things, okay? When I was a kid, I didn't know anything about sex. You have to understand, when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about sex. I didn't know that sex existed. I learned that sometime around when I was 14 years old, and I learned it in church, which is probably not the best place to learn that sex is a thing. But what it comes down to, you see, is that I saw that, people, you see it in the movies. You see people, talking about falling in love, and they marry someone and they spend the rest of their life with them. So I still had a concept, even when I was a kid, that, some people really love each other and they make a vow, they make a promise to, stay with each other in sickness and health and all that until death do us part. So they just make a promise to be in a relationship with someone the rest of their life. And when I was a kid, I thought, that's a beautiful thing. But I didn't know that sex was ever a part of that. And then when I learned about that, it kind of ruined the whole idea of marriage for me. Because it's like, wait, sex is something that people expect in a marriage. And they expect someone to help them produce kids. And see, I'm off the market. I always was, but now I really am. Because not only am I not going to have sex with people, but now I physically can't. I had my testicles removed, so I can't do that anymore, even if I wanted to. And I was sure of that. So what I'm just saying, though, is that the gender stereotypes are related to people's biological sex, and they're related to people's sexuality. So I consider myself one of the lucky ones, because since I don't care all that much about whether I have some relationship with like dating, marriage, and certainly not sex is not going to be part of my life. And so because that's not going to be part of my life, then I'm free to be whatever I want to be. That's the thing to understand, is that, back probably back in 2017 or even earlier, I came up with the name Chastity White Rose, and I explained that I'm transgender, and I explained that I feel like I have a female soul, and I feel like a girl, and that I wish I had been born a girl. And to this day, I still wish that I had, because, well, for one thing, I wouldn't have had to have the surgery to remove my testicles if I hadn't been born with them in the first place. And there was the whole pain issue, But it's very interesting, because when it comes to this, there's a lot of things. For example, people ask women like, when are you going to have kids? Especially like people. Well, if when people are married, it's worse. Like if a woman is married to a man, then people keep asking that woman, when are you going to get pregnant? When are you going to have kids? As if it's any of people's business. But they automatically assume that if you're a woman that you want to have kids. It's weird. On the flip side, if you're a man, people don't ask men that. People don't go around asking men when they're going to have kids. And why do you think that is? Because in general, men don't like, it's weird. Like it seems that men don't like kids as much, or men aren't all that concerned about having kids. That's the general impression. I know that's not always true. But there's just that assumption, and I think it's really strange. See, one of the saddest things I ever heard, and I think I may have mentioned this before, but that they did not allow men to change diapers at the church program. We called it respite night, where we babysat people's kids, older kids as well as younger kids, and they had a rule that men could not change diapers. Why was that? Because it was assumed that men were going to sexually abuse these babies. And I'm like, what? So society based on stereotypes and based on some evidence to back this up as well. It is assumed that if you are biologically male, you are assumed to be criminal. When you are born male and you have a male-looking body, you are guilty until proven innocent. Whereas if you're a biological female, you're innocent until proven guilty. You see how that works? Because the fact is, yes, most of the people who do terrible crimes, whether sexual crimes or other crimes, are biological males. And why do you think that is? I'll tell you why. Because they're capable of it. Men, but I'm speaking men as in biological males, are more capable of doing evil because they're more powerful. There's no denying that. There's no denying that most biological males are going to be at least twice as strong as any woman their age. There's no denying that. And then it gets into the whole transgender people in sports topic. That's another controversy is, should transgender people be allowed to compete in sports with people that are of the biological sex that they are trying to identify as when they change their bodies? And my answer to that is no. Have separate leagues for trans women, have trans women have their own competition, and have trans men have their own competition. Because that's just it should be separate. Either that, or how about just nobody plays sports? So that's my very short, simple answer to the transgender people and sports people. Transgender people can have their own leagues. Okay, why not? That seems like a simple solution because it's true. Biological males or trans men, the truth is trans men could easily overpower me, perhaps. If they have enough testosterone to build enough muscle, they could probably overpower me pretty quickly. There's no denying that either. So what I'm saying here is there's a very physical and biological difference in that men can be dangerous and they don't even need a gun to be dangerous because they have strong bodies. But what happened at some point was that people decided, well, because most of the people who do horrible crimes, because of their strength and because, let's be honest, it's just a lot easier for a male biologically to rape a biological female than the other way around. I'm serious. There are exceptions, but for the most part, men can rape women because they can overpower them. But how does a woman rape a man? Well, I don't know. I read a story of when it happened, something like that, but it involved the man being very drunk. So I don't think a woman can rape a sober man. I don't think. I could be wrong, but that's not the point. The point is stereotypes develop. And I feel like that men, okay, here's the deal. There are real advantages and disadvantages in living as being seen as a male in society or being seen as a female in society. And, there's male privilege for sure. Not denying that, but there's also female privilege. There is privilege either way because, see, like a woman can compliment another woman on how nice their hair looks, for example, or their clothes or something. And they'll just take it as a compliment. Whereas when a man mentions something about a woman's appearance, it's assumed that he's flirting with her and that he only wants sex with her. That's the problem and I knew this. I figured this out earlier in life. And so there were a lot of times when I would notice like women would have nice patterns on their clothes or something like that. And I would notice that, but then I thought, I can't say anything because then she'll think that I'm flirting with her, and I could be accused of flirting at best or sexual harassment at worst. So in other words, I had to learn that I am seen as automatically evil because I was born male, and I've always resented that. And that's not always the case because there are good people who will come to learn and know who you are, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm nonviolent and would never intentionally hurt anybody. So people who know me know that, but people who don't know that are just going to look at me and they're just going to assume that I'm a criminal just because I look male. Whereas in a way, that's the disadvantage of being male. Now, the disadvantage of being female is obvious. There are several disadvantages of being seen as female because people take you less seriously. Usually it's the men who have this attitude. Men have a bad attitude against women. They assume that women are less intelligent. They say that women are all crazy, emotional, irrational, and all that stuff, So women are assumed to, basically it's assumed that women are stupid and it's assumed that men are evil. Those are the disadvantages. Women are branded as stupid, no matter how smart they are, and men are labeled as evil, no matter how good they are. So that's the thing. So there's the disadvantages that men and women in general have to endure, is from what I've seen and based on my experience and experiences of others that I've talked to. But there are clear advantages. For example, there is one advantage biological males have. They can pee standing up. I swear, that's it. Well, okay. So biological men, what men can do, men can pee standing up, and they can lift slightly heavier objects than most women can. That's it. Lift heavy stuff and can pee out in the woods standing up really easily. That's male privilege right there. I swear, that's male privilege from my perspective. So are there any clear advantages that women can do that men can't do? Are there any actual physical advantages that women have? Well, women can sit in a chair or ride a bicycle without sitting on their testicles. That's female privilege right there. But I have that now because I had mine removed. So everything's good and almost all is right with my life now. So that's just what I'm saying is there are some biological advantages for both sexes, but there are also social disadvantages. And look, we can't, there's nothing we can really do about the biological advantages or disadvantages that people have, except through hormones and surgery. Yes, people can change their bodies if they have the money and can find doctors willing to help them. People can change their bodies to make themselves happier. And my position is that people should be allowed. I do think people should be allowed to have hormones and surgery if that's what they want. But I also do think that it's good for people to be evaluated by a psychologist just to make sure, before they have any life-altering surgeries, just to make sure that they know what they're getting into. Because you have to know what you're getting into, with what the things you do, obviously. I think any surgery, people need to have informed consent sort of a thing. Absolutely, but I'm absolutely for hormones and surgery if it helps them, if it makes them more comfortable in their body. But at the same time, keeping all that in mind, I think the most important thing that I want to say to the whole world, like if the whole world listens to me on just this one thing, yes, of course, people should be able to change their bodies and be socially seen as the man or woman that they feel they are inside. But we also need to fix society. We need to fix society so that people are free to explore their gender identity and they're not put into a box so that you have to work this job, or you have to dress this way, or you have to play with these toys because you were born male or female. Oh, and we have a comment. Ernest M. Griffin says, "Do you remember me?" It does so happen I do remember you, Ernest. I remember you from Life Christian Center, that church. So what's up? It's funny you should come across my video right now. Anyway, I was just saying that, people, they need to make not such a big deal. Like when the gay marriage, before gay marriage was legalized in the US, for example, it was something I read about in the newspapers. And I used to think, well, There was two things I used to think. Okay, first of all, why do are people against gay marriage? What's the problem? I don't see a problem with it. And second of all, I thought, why do gay people want to get married so badly? I understand it now, of course. They just wanted their relationships to be seen as valid. They just want people, there's a certain amount of respect that comes from people who are heterosexually married. There's just a social privilege, and people, when you say someone's your husband or wife when you're straight, people are like, oh, cool. People are like, oh, well, cool, I wish you the happiness. But then when you're gay, then people are like, oh, you're sinning. God doesn't like gay people. Go to hell. So that's the way people are. So yeah. That's the thing about it, is people have different reactions to that. But I think although gender identity is related to sexual orientation, because some sexual orientation plays a part in how their their gender identity, how that plays out, and what transition steps they make. We have more comments. We have gender is important, and we have God loves gay people. Well, I hope so. I hope so, Ernest. I hope that if there is a God, that God can love gay people. After all, he, she, it, because just be clear, we don't really know whether God is he or she. We don't know. Maybe God was biologically male, but identifies as something else. Who can know what God is? What is a man? What is a woman? What is a God? Does anybody know these things? Okay. Yeah, we don't know. But if God is the creator, then God created a lot of gay people and also created a lot of transgender people. And here's what I think is particularly difficult, because there are a lot of religious people who have a real problem with transgender people. And the reason is because they believe that God created people as the way they're supposed to be, and that transgender people are saying, well, no, God, you made me wrong. And that is what I'm saying. Because if God put me in a male body, he made a mistake, or she made a mistake. But we'll just assume he for God, because that's tradition. But, logically, however God may define, God may be male or female or both or neither. Who knows? And it doesn't matter to me all that much. In fact, we need to get to a time in society where somebody's biological sex or their gender identity, which are two different things, remember, how they don't mean all that much, how they don't mean as much as people think they do, because what it comes down to is people are people. And I'm still very much the same person as I was when I was a kid. I'm just older now, and the main difference is that I refer to myself as female, and I call myself Chastity White Rose these days. Even though physically I haven't changed all that much, and my personality hasn't changed, I'm still the same person, But people are people, and they are who they are, not just what they are. It's not about, is someone male or female. That's not the most important thing. Somebody doesn't automatically get my respect. Somebody doesn't become someone that I respect and admire just because of what biological sex they are. And I also don't think that someone's gender identity or the way that they dress or what surgery or hormones they do to change, themselves, that doesn't even matter too much to me. I like listening to their stories because they're very relatable. But there are people that are like transgender YouTubers. There's people who are gay YouTubers, who their entire channel is all about how gay or transgender they are. And I don't want to be those people, I don't want to be one of those people that's all I'm about. And I believe there's a lot of other things I'm about. But we have a comment. They matter for procreation. Funny you should bring that up, Ernest, because procreation is a weird topic. Let me ask you, Ernest, are you still like a Christian, like the type that believes that some people will go to hell if they don't believe in God the right way? Are you still one of those people? I'm just curious, because if you believe that some people go to hell, then perhaps procreation is not a good idea. Why create more people who are at risk for going to hell? You know, that's something I thought of years ago. But procreation is not. Oh, your answer is no. Very interesting. I'm actually very curious to hear what you believe now. But you know what? People's beliefs change. People's gender expression changes. You know, people change all the time in various little ways, and my beliefs have changed on many things over time. But yeah, and as far as procreation, let me talk just a little bit about procreation. First of all, whether I like it or not, people are going to procreate. I don't like this fact, because I want the human race to go extinct, of course, so they can't hurt the animals. But people are still going to procreate, because the majority of people are still going to be heterosexual. The majority of people are still going to be straight. I don't think anything's ever going to change that. So having a few people here and there that are gay or who are transgender end up getting their genitals removed that cause procreation is not going to change the fact that procreation happens. So if anybody else doesn't want the human race to go extinct, and they're worried that all this transgender or gay stuff is going to stop all procreation, don't worry. That's not going to happen. I know. You have a comment here. I know. I listen to you all the time. Well, thanks, Ernest. I didn't know you were listening. I never really know too much when people are watching my videos, or if they're reading anything that I write. But I have written a lot on my blog and on Facebook, and I've recorded a lot of videos recently. So thanks for listening, Ernest. It means a lot, because here's the thing I want people to understand. I do record a lot of videos, and I do write a lot of things, and I've shared parts of my unicorn story recently. And the reason I do it is because I'm a person who has opinions like everyone else. And I feel that I want my voice to be heard. We all want our voice to be heard, right? We all want to have discussions. We all have our thoughts, our opinions, and we want our opinions to get out there. And that's why people write books and blog posts, and why people record videos. And there's so much out there. And each person has a story to tell. All of us have a story to tell. And the way I tell my own story is for the most part, I record my own videos, and I just blast my thoughts, this video that I was doing today was inspired by many things. It was inspired partly because I was talking on Discord to my two friends that I was playing Minecraft with, but I also happened to see a video, because I'm subscribed to several YouTubers, and I was watching a recent video by Matilda Hogberg, and she's one of the famous trans women YouTubers. And it's funny because she's one of those people that, like, her whole YouTube channel is all about gender transition and stuff like that, like what it's like dating as a trans woman. And I've listened to enough of those people to know that dating as a trans woman is not a good idea, because you'll probably end up getting killed too. It's really sad, the violence against trans women. But the recent video I saw of hers was, are transgender women men? And once again, I think we need to get down to it, is what is a man or what is a woman? Because I really do believe that any one thing, everyone has a different idea of what a man or woman is. And I think a lot of it has to do with our parents. I think a lot of it has to do with the parents that you grew up with or didn't have, and the way they acted really shaped your perception. And growing up, I grew up with a perception that women were better than men. And I'm sure that affected me, because my mom was the parent who loved me, and my dad was a piece of junk. He was worthless. He was an asshole, So early on, I got an impression that men are bad and women are good. And I'm sure perhaps that did have an influence on me in how I view gender identity today. I'm sure that's true, you know. And over time, I've learned that there are some good men out there. There are, but I do think there are things that men do wrong and things that women do wrong. And what men do wrong is men are taught to hide their feelings. They're taught that big boys don't cry and that men don't cry. You know, they're taught that they have to always be tough and act like they can just keep it all together, not have any problems. And do you know what happens when they do that? They explode. They go nuts, and then they turn into psychos like me. That's what happens. But then women make this mistake too. Women are taught that they have to be passive and they have to let themselves be abused. And they also always think they're fat. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're only 100 pounds. Society has still convinced all women that they're fat. I'll never understand it. It's like, when was the last time you looked in the mirror? You're not fat. Like, how many times? And also, women, you don't have to wear high heels and you don't have to wear makeup if you don't want to, you know? It's just crazy. But people have all these ideas of the way men and women are supposed to act. And it's like, really? You have to hide your emotions and not get any emotional help because you were born with a penis and testicles, so you have to not cry? Like, what? And because you were born with a vagina, therefore you have to wear lipstick and high heels? Like, what? Like, come on, who comes up with this crap? Society is mad. Let's see, we got another comment. Men and women, matter of science, DNA, cell, blood type, and chemistry. Well, first of all, men and women can both have the same blood type. In chemistry, I'm not sure what that is about, but I think you might have missed the part where I was talking about intersex conditions and about chromosomes, because you don't know someone's chromosomes by looking at them. And some people have Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, several syndromes, and have more than one set of genitalia, or even have one set of genitalia, but then the hormone levels are different. Because they had certain chromosomes and it sends signals to the brain to produce different hormones. So people end up as weird hybrids of male and female biologically. So I do believe that it's very suspect. Even the idea of biological sex is not clearly cut into a binary of only male and female. I think that some people are biologically both at the same time, or perhaps neither in some cases. So biologically, I think people can be more than just male or female. But socially, people can be whatever it is that they are, whatever it is they want to be. So look, if you want to be a man who wears high heels and wears lipstick, you can totally do that. And I think you should be allowed to do that. Other people will probably think it's weird, but hey, you be you. And if somebody wants to be like me and they wants to be a biological male who wears a checkerboard dress and dances, well, people should be allowed to do that. People, their gender expression, which is the way that they act, talk, and dress, it's just typically associated more with one biological sex than another. That's their gender expression. Gender roles, gender expression, gender identity are all different things, but they're all kind of related. And there are problems with expectations that you have to act a certain way. There are real problems with that. But there's more than one thing going on here. Both that I would say that, here's where it gets tricky, because gender and biological sex are, I believe, societal constructs. They're social constructs in that how they're defined is defined by society. But I also won't deny that there are realities that go on. Yes, there are differences in chromosomes and hormone levels and the genitals people are born with. But what I am saying is that the body you were born with should not define who you are. It should not define how you dress. It should also not define who you fall in love with and who you marry. I don't think your biological body should mean that because you were born this way, you have to live this way. So that's all there is to it. That's really all there is to it, you know, because people, they should be allowed to live in the way that's best for them. And it's very simple. And so I think that maybe people will get over their attitudes. Like there's no reason to be there's no reason to be against gay people, and there's no reason to be against trans people. There's really not any valid reason. And some people, they just think it's weird because they're not used to it. They don't necessarily hate gay or trans people, but they just want to understand because it's so foreign to them. Some people like that, and other people are against people being gay or transgender because they're taught that it's a sin by their religion. But big deal. So I mean, if somebody is sinning according to your religion and they go to hell according to your religion, well, you got to let them do it because it's their life, you know? So what can you do? Let's see here. Sexuality shouldn't define who you are and what status you have in life. Yep, completely agreed there, Ernest. Yep, it shouldn't define everything about you. That's right. Yeah, and I think that's the message. And I think more and more people are understanding this. More people see it's becoming more acceptable now. People are more aware that people are gay and that people are transgender and that people are bisexual, asexual, you know, transgender. It's becoming more aware. You know, people know about these things. And there's no end of resources. Like you seriously, I suggest someone gets on Wikipedia and looks up intersex. There's like this massive article explaining all kinds of issues. It's great stuff. There's so many books on LGBTQ topics. And so here's the thing. I am fully in support of gay and transgender people, queer people, whatever, people who are different, people who are not just, you know, the stereotypical cisgender heterosexual people. See, the whole LGBT people, that whole group, even though it's not technically a community because those people are all on board with each other too, it's about those who are different than the norm. It's about the minorities, and those people will always be in a minority. There's no denying that. However, I do think there is also a time when it goes too far. The LGBT movement, there's times it goes too far. It's when somebody calls you ma'am and you feel like a sir, or they call you sir and you feel like a ma'am. They refer to you by the wrong pronoun. They don't even know who you are, and then you get all pissed at them because they referred to you as the wrong pronoun. They called you a he when you wanted to be a she. They call you a she when you wanted to be a he, and they make assumptions. Look, people are going to make assumptions. People are probably never going to completely get it, but people are going to make assumptions, like some. Oh, let's see here. We have a comment. Why do gays try to equate themselves to a race of people? Well, perhaps, I'm not entirely sure what you mean, but perhaps you're referring to how some gay people feel that they face a discrimination for their sexual orientation the same as they do for their skin color, for example. Like for example, it's assumed that black people are a certain way. It's assumed that white people are a certain way. So maybe that's what they mean. They compare being gay or transgender, for example. They compare that to being black or white. It's because you're born with a certain body and people make assumptions based on the body you were born with. Maybe that's what they mean, you know, is that it's like that. Like, should you be mean to somebody because they're black? No. Should you be mean to someone because they're gay? No. It's a physical difference, and that's what it is. And what I'm saying is that that's all it is, really. You know, except it's a little bit different because being gay is not exactly the same as being black, because you can't look at someone and see they're gay, whereas you can see that someone's black or white, or yellow or red or whatever the color they are by looking at them. So it's not quite the same thing. But some differences can be seen by the way someone looks, and some differences cannot be seen. You know, let's see. If you dress like a guy, then get angry when the pronoun is she. Yeah, I guess I'm not entirely sure what you mean, but yeah, it's weird. But people, you know what? People are too sensitive, and I've always been sort of relaxed about it. And today, I feel a lot more comfortable with myself than I used to. You know, now it's not as important. You know what? You know whether people respect me and whether they call me he or she doesn't matter too much. Even though I prefer she, I prefer being called Chastity White Rose and all that. I also am not going to go do an act of violence on someone if they call me a man. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Oh, your pronoun is. Yeah, I prefer female pronouns, Ernest. I prefer she, her. You know, that kind of thing. You know, that's great. Not everybody does that because yeah, most people look at me. Most people still call me Chandler. They still call me brother or dude, bro, or man or sir. People do that, and they're just used to it. And I see no reason to correct them because there are more important things in life than to pick on people for the pronouns they use. But when you do know someone, I do recommend if you know somebody that that prefers certain pronouns or prefer to go by a certain name, then absolutely call, when you remember at least, you know, call them what they like. And so, you know, like when my mom finally started calling me Chastity, it made me so happy. It's hard to explain because that's who I am, you know. And actually my name, Chastity White Rose, it's actually not so much about gender. It's really not, because although it is a very girly sounding name and it was intended to, the reason I'm Chastity White Rose is because of my vow of celibacy. Chastity literally meaning celibacy, and the white rose meaning virginity and purity and all that. So that's my name that I go by these days. So yeah. So that's just my little explanation. So that's the name I go by, and that's something. Whether I think of myself as a man or woman is actually irrelevant in terms of my name, because my name is a statement about a path of life I've chosen, and is not about my gender identity or my biological sex. Does that make sense? It's not even about my body or gender identity, although it does fit in with a female identity. I was looking for a name that sounded female, but there was a series of events that led to this name, and I do feel that it is the name that represents me. And I would keep this name, even if someday I decide that I wanted to identify as a man again, I would still always be Chastity White Rose. And yet, I am also Chandler Isaac Klebs. That's my birth name. People know me by either, and both names are on my books that I publish these days. So I answer to two names, Chandler Klebs and Chastity Rose. So yeah, it's really cool. So yeah, I guess the moral of the story and the point of this video was that, you know what, just love everybody, regardless of how black or white, male or female, human or cow or whatever you are. Whatever body you have is not all of you. And you can't know someone by looking at them. You have to talk to them. You have to see how they are, the way they live, and then you get to know them. And that's the important thing. The important thing to me is not necessarily even what pronouns people call me or whether people knew what gender I thought I was, but what kind of person am I? And I do believe I've been a very good person in this life. And I feel like I'm living to the best of my ability the way I know how to live is right. And that's the takeaway of this is, I guess, don't be prejudiced. Don't prejudge others. You know how people say, not to judge others, judge not lest you be judged, and all that silly stuff. Well, don't prejudge someone, okay? You don't have a prejudice. Don't prejudge someone. In other words, don't judge someone before you get to know them. First, you get to know them, and then see what kind of person they are. And if they're nice, then great, they can be your best friend. And if they're a real jerk and they're an asshole, well, then yeah, you're judging them that way. It's like, I don't like them, they mean, so you get to know someone, then you judge them. You don't prejudge them, you post judge them. Does that make sense? I feel like that's the way. Yeah, you can't see a person's sexual preference. Yeah, you really can't. You don't know what someone's sexual preference or other preference really is. You can't just by looking at them. You just really don't know, So that's the thing. So I think it's just important to know that people are deeper than their skin. People are very different. They have certain things about them, and the thing. And let me tell you something. Well, thanks, Ernest. You're a nice person, Chastity. Well, that's a nice thing of you to say, Ernest. Thanks a lot for listening. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you have to really get to know a person to see what they're about. And the people that I respect the most, that there are some very specific people, and usually the people that are my favorite people happen to be the people that end up, for some reason, watching my videos and reading my stuff. And that's because we have interaction, even though I'm never physically present with most people. People I like, well, Ernest, for example, here, that I knew at a church back, I haven't been at since like 2011. It's been that long, but who still remembers me. And there are people who I've never met who live in Canada, England, California, Florida, you name it. People who I'll never meet in person, that I will never be within 100 feet of. But they'll see what I wrote and they'll comment. And I'll see something that they wrote and I'll comment. And we'll have a conversation. We talk about amazing things, And so I find that I actually, even though I've never been able to have a very deep friendship to really get to know someone as much as I would like, there are a lot of people that I would call friends who are really good people, and I get to know them based on what they say and what they do, what little evidence I have of it on the internet. And that's a beautiful thing. So the bottom line is, no matter how male or female, black or white, or whatever else somebody may appear, get to know them, and then you will know who they are. I think that society is making progress towards being able to be people being treated more equally. I do think we are making slow progress towards that. I certainly hope so. You know what I mean? I certainly hope that we are making progress towards that. And I do hope that this video that I've done has been a little bit enlightening. For example, if you are new to the topic of people who are different with gender or different with sexuality, if you happen to know somebody who's transgender or gay or maybe asexual or whatever queer means, I still don't know what queer means. I haven't figured it out yet, but if you meet someone who's just different, they're a minority and they're a little bit different, get to know who they are. You don't want to just make assumptions and think you know people, because in fact, I have listened to a lot of videos by gay people, and it's very interesting. I've watched videos by gay people, but I've also watched movies featuring gay people. And of course, the movies that you buy aren't necessarily representative of how people really are, but they're still pretty close. And I find it very interesting. I don't see a difference, like in the way people act when they're gay. I don't see them being all that different to each other than a straight couple. They act the same. To me, it seems the same. So I think it's very much a thing. I think some people they look beyond the surface, and I think that's a very beautiful thing. People just look beyond the surface and they get to know who people are, and people can intellectually connect. So that's the thing. And I've had my own prejudice in the past, and I've had my own fear of men, but no, I've learned a lot, and I've learned that just as I'm not evil just because I was born a man, neither are neither is every other man evil. You know, I've learned that over time. It's something I've had to learn the hard way. And so I've learned not to make assumptions about people because I don't want them to make assumptions about me. So that's the thing is, I hope this has been an enlightening video. I probably should end it at some point soon because I feel like I've said just about anything that, everything that I want to say, but perhaps I will revisit this topic in the future. So if anybody has any questions, you know, you can, even after I end this video, you can leave your comments and you can contact me one way or another. And if you have any questions for me, questions that you would like me to answer, then I'll do so. I'll make another video sometime. We'll see how it goes. Oh, but we have one more comment. People need people of all ethnicities. I think you mean ethnicities, like people of all different races and all that, all different backgrounds. Yep, I agree. You know what I think, Ernest? I think that our differences make us stronger together. We're all different because if we were all the same, then we could all be wrong and we would not know it. Oh, my sister. Hey, Charity. Yeah, can't judge a book by its cover. Ain't it the truth? Yep, you just can't really tell. So yeah, I mean, you just got to get to know people for who they are, you know. So that's pretty good. Let's see here. Is there anything else? I guess. Yeah, you know what? I guess I'll end this stream for now, but you know what? I intend to be doing a live stream probably at least once a week on Sunday nights. I will be going back to work soon. I'll be going back to work on the 16th, and I hope that my job goes well because my knee's healing. It's still in a little pain, but I'll probably be able to work. I sure hope so. I need the money. But even when I am back at work, I'll probably will be able to do videos at least on Sunday. You know, but since I'm still off from work currently and I had time, I wanted to record, you know, a video on my thoughts about the whole transgender thing and all that, you know. So actually, no, Ernest, I don't work at Hy-Vee anymore. I work for a different company right now and I shelve files and all that. It's a very physical job. Although, if this job doesn't work out for me, I do think I will try going back to Hy-Vee because I have 7 years of experience working at Hy-Vee. And what I used to do at my Hy-Vee job was physically much, much easier than what I'm currently doing because I actually had to do a lot less bending at Hy-Vee than I do at my job now. And my new job has killed my knees, seriously. So we'll see what happens with my job. I hope I'll be able to make enough money. Hope I'll be able to do good. We'll see what happens, and I'll keep y'all updated is what I'll do. So everyone, have a good night, everybody. It's been fun. So be excellent to each other and party on.